A great interview with David Patterson. It was a long interview. I know David gave us some really great answers, precise answers, giving his thoughts on, as I say, who has the cards? Is it the president of the United States, or is the president finally realizing that the United States can't do it on their own? And maybe some the scare of empty shelves or partially empty shelves over the next 6 months, the holiday season, the back to school season. Maybe that is a fear enough to get the president to hopefully come to an agreement on some of these trade deals with other major countries around the world. So fascinating interview. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Now I wanted to talk, or I guess turn the page a little bit, slightly different, but I wanted to talk about the tariffs that President Trump has said that he would put on Apple because he was not happy that Apple has moved production from China to India with respect to the iPhone. And also want to talk a bit about his threat to put 50% tariffs on the EU. Now, it's quite interesting because since he's mentioned the 50% tariffs on the EU, he hasn't scaled back to 50%, but talks have happened since then. We know that the Trump administration has had talks with the European Union. And because the talks have, I guess, gotten a little bit further ahead and they've actually happened, so the president has agreed to push back those tariffs to July 9th, hoping that a deal will happen before that deadline. So quite interesting as to what's happening. Obviously, the effect on the markets when that was announced last Friday, very negative, very negative. The market sold off on the fact that tech sold off on the basis of the Apple tariff announcement, and the rest of the market sold off pretty much based on the announcement of an EU tariff. So it's it is becoming, in my opinion, increasingly evident that the president wants to get trade deals done. I think that something can happen. I think the EU can hopefully come to some sort of framework with the president. Hopefully, they can come to some sort of an agreement. And as I say all the time, I know that the United States, most powerful country in the world, largest economy in the world, but they do a lot of business, obviously, with many other countries. And with respect to the European Union, they do a lot of business with the European Union because we're talking 27 countries in the Union. The European Union as a whole is practically as big as the United States in terms of economies, or I guess that region is equal to the United States alone. That goes to show you how big the United States is, but a very important region for the US in terms of trade, imports, and exports. So it is definitely in the president's best interest to make a deal, to get a deal done, one that is obviously fair, as he will say, and good for the United States to improve trade. First chart here that we have talks about trade with the European Union and the US. There we go. A bit difficult to see the numbers at the top, but what's most important is the blue and gray lines. So what the gray line represents are imports. Imports to the US from the European Union. And you can see you're talking over $600 billion of imports to the US. It is the highest today, well, in 2024. Obviously, we don't have 2025 numbers as yet, but it is the highest in 2024 that it has ever been, which is a pretty big number. Then you look at exports. Exports from the European Union, or exports to the European Union. You're looking at, which is the blue line, almost 400 billion. So let's say roughly $370 billion in exports to the European Union. So to me, this is a very important region for the US, to say the least. You couple them with Canada, with Mexico, and China. You're talking the four, in my opinion, four largest regions, largest countries, trading partners, let's call them, to the United States in the world today. And all four right now, I would imagine, are knee deep in conversations and negotiations with the United States. Go to our next chart here. You can see who out of the European Union is the largest trading, partner, or who trades most. And it is Germany, the largest economy, obviously, in that region in Europe. $161.2 billion of goods to the United States were made by Germany. Now, I would imagine a lot of that are automobiles, as I'm sure they are. And we know that there are a lot of, or there are tariffs in the auto sector as well, parts and cars that are made outside the United States. So I think a lot of these numbers are going to change in the not so distant future if we do not see tariffs being eliminated or at least brought down to the 10% line that I think the U.S. is comfortable holding on all countries. So that's kind of it's going to be a baseline 10% tariff. Thought we would switch now to the other top headline. So European Union, United States in negotiations, tariffs are on hold until July 9th. But then we have the tariff situation with Apple. And as I said earlier, Apple tariffs brought down the tech industry quite a bit on Friday when they were announced. And what you ended up seeing was a market reeling from that announcement. And I don't think anybody expected President to issue tariffs. We know that the CEO of Apple has been in conversation, actually visited the White House recently. And I was hoping to hear some sort of middle ground met or a deal reached. We know Apple has promised to invest up to $500 billion in the United States, but I guess that's just not enough for the president. He wants to see the manufacturing of iPhones, and we all know that that would be a very difficult thing to do just based on labor alone. Labor costs alone, minimum wage in the United States is much higher than many places around the world, such as India, such as China, of course, that Apple is now manufacturing phones. So to bring back that manufacturing to the United States would be very difficult and very costly. Perhaps the average iPhone would go up by maybe as much as $200-300 if they were to manufacture in the United States. Here we have a chart, how Apple shares have reacted to U.S. tariff news. And I guess the big downturn that you see there, Trump imposes 10% tariff on all imports with higher tariffs on 57 countries. So that's when they put on the reciprocal tariffs at the beginning of April. Then you saw the market and Apple deteriorate significantly. The pause in reciprocal tariffs is when you saw a bounce back in Apple shares. Certain electronics excluded from reciprocal tariffs. That was another jump off point for Apple stock. Continue to move higher all the way until, I would say, almost the end of May. And then we've seen a topsy-turvy market in May, and the most recent downturn led by the announcement of 25% tariffs on iPhones. And interesting, I know that iPhone or Apple, I should say, has complained. I know that I'm sure many in the industry are saying, well, if you put a tariff on iPhones, who are the winners here? And that would be the other phone makers like Chinese phone makers or even a Samsung. So now there's talk that perhaps if with the 25% tariffs on iPhones, perhaps we may see 25% tariffs on other phones as well coming into the US. So two big headlines that came out within the last, let's call it week or so, more towards the end of last week. And two major headlines that caused the markets to pull back. Since then, we had a holiday in the US on the Monday. So markets were closed. Canadian markets are up quite a bit on the announcement that they're pushing back this tariff on the EU to July 9th. On Tuesday, that's what drove the market significantly higher during the course of the trading day. And obviously, here we are on Wednesday. So two announcements that I think are extremely important to the markets, and two announcements that I think individual investors got to continue to be mindful of and watch as we move forward.